Hi everyone, this is Rebecca from QuiltNCode, and this is our beginner video in our hand embroidery series. So today I'm going to be going over all your supplies and how you can do certain simple things that you'll need for the rest of the videos. All of the supplies that I'm going to be using will be included in a kit that will be available at our shop and our website, so you can just find that in the link below. So let's get stitching. So for this video series, I'm going to be showing you how to make this cute little panel. So to begin with, I want to talk about fabric size. I like fabric that is pretty good size. It's about 10 by 10 inches. You can always go bigger, but since we're using a small hoop, it's easier to have smaller fabric so that you can have more control over it in the hoop. So I'm going to be using one of the iron-on patterns for this, and you can use iron-on patterns, and that's will be included in our kit, but there's also the option of using a coloring book or going on Pinterest and finding coloring pages that you like. That's how I did my first quilt. Is I found a coloring book that I really liked that had dragons, and so I would put my fabric, this is my coloring sheet, I put it down, and then you take your fabric and you put it over your coloring sheet, and I'm sure it's hard to see on camera, but you'll be able to see it through your fabric, and you can use one of these fabric erasable pens and you can trace out your pattern. But for this one I'm going to be using our iron-on. So I'll take my fabric, you'll put the pattern with the colorful side down because that's the transfer, and you'll iron it on. And the patterns has specific instructions, so if you're using a different pattern you want to make sure that you read those specific instructions. So I'm going to iron mine on really quick. So this is the pattern that we're using. You can see that this is the one owl that I have chosen, but you have several different options. I've chosen the owl because it lets me teach you 7 different stitches. So I ironed on my owl, so now I have my rough outline, and you can see there are a couple spots that didn't quite want to iron well. If I need to, I can go back with my pen and fill in those spots. But for right now, I'm going to show you how to put your hoop on. So with your hoop, you're going to have, when you open it up, you'll have a little lip. It's hard to see, I'm sure. On one edge, you can feel it. And that is going to be the bottom. So when you slide it on, that'll be your bottom. So you'll put your hoop down. Wherever you need your pattern, you'll put it there. And then you'll take your top, fit it down, and then tighten it right on up. And as you're going, especially with me, I like my fabric to be nice and tight on there, so I'll move my fabric to just pull it and get it nice and tight. And as I'm going and as I'm stitching, it'll get looser, and so if it happens to get too loose, I'll just take my hoop off and redo it so that it's nice and tight again. So now that we have our hoop on, I'm going to talk to you about needles. So I'm using an embroidery needle. I have my little bit of thread on there so I don't lose it. We're using these embroidery needles. You want embroidery needles because they have nice big eyes, so you're not having to strain to try and thread your needle. It's a lot easier with these. So I'll grab this thread. When I'm doing my thread, I always measure it this way. So I hold it in my fingers, I pull it out, and I take it down to about my elbow. That's about the length we want. So then I cut it right there, and then doing embroidery on fabric like this, we only want 6 strands of thread. So our embroidery thread has 6 strands, so I'm going to pull 2, and that is what I'm going to use when I'm sewing. I think I said that wrong earlier. I want 2 strands when I'm sewing on stuff like that. If I'm doing, if I were going to do something like on jeans, I'd want more thread. So then, now that I have my thread, take my little bit out, thread my needle, and I'll show you how to do a magic knot. I always lick my thread so it stays together. See if it'll thread for me on camera. There we go. So to do a magic knot, I have my 2 sides of my thread, and I'm going to have a shorter one and a longer one. I'm going to take the longer one and I'm going to pinch it between my fingers. Then my needle is going to go on top of it between my fingers, so I'm pinching both. I'm going to hold it and then wrap it around. The more times you wrap it around, the bigger your knot's going to be. I normally do 3 times. And you push your needle through, still holding your thread, and you pull it all the way through, and then you have your magic knot. So to do that again, I pinch it between my fingers, I put my needle on top and pinch that, and then I wrap it around. I normally do 3 times. 3, pinch, and pull my needle through. And that's your knot. It takes practice. It took me, oh, I don't know how long. I know my grandma taught it to me when I was very young, because we use it all the time in sewing, and I have only perfected it now when I'm learning how to do hand embroidery. So that is all I want to talk about for this video. In the next video, we'll be moving on to our first stitch. Thank you guys!